Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. I'm Steve Gibson.
I'm Ben Matlock. Hi.
You know, the first couple... We've talked about it, I think, every week since we did it. We moved our recording time, same day, just later in the evening. And at first, I was like, yeah, this is great. And then now, I was eating dinner at like 6 o'clock, and we recorded at 9 o'clock my time. So I'm eating at 6, like, man, I could go to bed. Fuck.
Well, I felt that way when we recorded at 3 p.m. my time, so not a lot has changed.
No. Yeah, I was going to say, it's not like we were ever a high-energy duo.
To be fair, I never want to listen to a high-energy podcast.
That's true.
It's like true. Always, and those are always like sports podcasts with like the most annoying fuckers alive who are just like people you've never heard of. They're just guys who have been to a couple of fucking football games and like decided that like my nickname's the Tasmanian Devil, you know. And
what up, Taz? We're back.
The Wild
Another
Taz.
week in the books.
Wild Taz here, and we're going to talk about why Kirk Cousins is not the answer.
But now I'm picturing a sports show where we both want to be Taz, so we have to. You're like, one's Wild Taz and the other one's like Devil Taz or something like
Double Taz.
Taz. That is a dream of mine, is to do a sports podcast would be great, because I don't know enough about sports and I only watch my teams. Like, I very rarely watch if it's a game between two random like teams. So I'd be very, very unknowledgeable. But even better than a sports podcast, I would love to do play-by-play commentary. Like, not on like NBC or something, because I'd get like run out of the
And you got Matthew Stafford here lined up for the tricky dick. Yeah, I feel like if I got into like sports broadcasting or anything, like I would just learn that like it's all bullshit and nobody knows what they're talking about. Like even
and that's quite apparent when you're watching it. Like, I love replay now, because you'll be watching something and then the announcers will be like, well, that was clearly a this thing, right? Well, let's go to the expert in New York, because they're always in New York, unless hockey, I guess, is Canada. But anyway, they're like, let's talk to Gene in New York. And then Gene gets on. He's like, well, clearly by the rules, this is what's saying. And then the refs come back and they're like, yeah, the opposite of what those assholes all just said. That's what we decided. And so you're right. Yeah. Nobody knows what the hell's going on.
After review, we decided that rules are arbitrary. And I call the shots.
That player called me a mean name a couple downs ago, and I'm going to get back at him.
We're very sensitive. Automatic first down.
But yeah, like, basically, and I didn't realize they were doing this at first until I heard the radio show talking about it, but I guess the Eli and Peyton thing, like a lot of the games have them on like ESPN 2 or 3
Monday
or something.
night. They've been doing Monday night broadcasts.
Yeah, and I haven't watched it, but that's what I'm picturing. Like, I wouldn't want to be the main broadcast, but if somebody wants to give me a show where just like me and some other joker, you would fit quite well, because you know more about sports.
I have experience with that. Wow.
Yeah. Like, Steve, you're an idiot, and like just that back and forth live on air. And I'm such a homer too, so I'd be like, that's a fucking bullshit call, when clearly it wasn't.
Yeah. It's kind of the one thing that would make me hesitant about doing sports shows is that it's kind of like why I couldn't ever like consistently video game stream, because it brings out the worst in me. Like, it's really tough to explain what childlike anger I have, and I'm 30 now, and I'm getting mad about like 20-year-olds not throwing the ball right.
I know, and as soon as you remind yourself of that fact, you feel like the biggest like jackass. Like, you're like, hey, these kids are all, I'm double their age. You're not quite to that mark yet, but they're all younger than us, or most of them.
Yeah.
And it's just a stupid like game that doesn't mean anything, and you're getting so fucking pissed. And then,
I've accepted that this anger is a part of me, and like, it's necessary. I genuinely believe like I have to get mad at trivial bullshit to survive, or my body will just fail. It's kind of like a car engine that, like, If you let it die, it'll never turn back on again. But if you just keep running it until it explodes, aka a heart attack, then it's fine.
So we just got another shirt for our non-existent merch store, and it's just "Anger is my coffee" or something like that. Anger is my
coffee's
fuel.
my coffee too. Hence the heart attack.
Well, yeah.
So I've accepted this as a part of myself. It's just still very embarrassing to broadcast just how upset I get about fucking
that's funny
sports.
Because that's not how I picture you watching sports, because based on your tweets, you're tying a noose. You're just like, well, that was a real nice play the Eagles had that one time, but...
That's in the moment. The worst thing is, and you'll see it, you'll definitely see it if you've been following me this season for the Eagles, after every game, I can't stop tweeting about... every single part of it, and ultimately I can complain about everything with my sports teams, but by the end of it, it's always like centered on the GM, and I'm like, I want that fucker in a dumpster somewhere, dude. Like, I don't want him to. And not only do I not want him to have a job, and this guy got us a Super Bowl like 3 years ago, and I'm already out on it, and I'm like, fuck this clown.
Well, it's like they say on the local show here all the time, it's what have you done for me now, like recently. Like, we're kind of getting in that boat with, I know you couldn't care less about MLS soccer, but the Columbus Crew, I'm a big fan of that.
That's
and
not
they
true.
Won
I'm a big LAFC fan. Just got in this week.
Good for you.
Right when they're out of it.
That's what has the Crew won the whole thing last year, and so you should be excited. And then they theoretically strengthened their roster in the offseason, so you're all excited. And now it looks like they're not even going to make the playoffs this year. It's like, how the fuck do you do that? And a lot of us are kind of like, not necessarily like instantly fire the coach, but it's like, put that microscope on him right now, because that should not. Yeah. You can never guarantee 2 championships in a row, but to win it and then not even make the playoffs is pretty
special.
Yeah.
I'm in. Hey, take the that's the price of championships sometimes. We all want a dynasty, but sometimes you get it and you have to fail for another 50 fucking years.
The frustrating thing to me, and I think the Eagles went through this, to turn this not sports show into a sports show, is the Crew did have a lot of injuries this year. But the guys that they had left on the field after the injuries should have been, on paper,
should have been
they
enough.
Yeah. But the frustrating part is that'll be the excuse. They'll be like, well, we can't really scrutinize them too much because there was injuries. It's but
that changes. Take it from an Eagles fan. We're at year 3. Nobody's accepting that anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, well, then you assembled an old beat-up team, and you should be in a dumpster.
Anyway, we don't actually talk about sports every week. Yeah.
The non-essential sports podcast coming soon to whenever. But this is Halloween time. This is October Spooky Fest, which is no different than normal shows for us. But I'm not breaking the theme yet, so we're still looking good. We're still on track for Halloween.
Well, yeah, it's kind of easy for us because out of all the different stuff we do, 90% of it would naturally just fit into.
But we've talked about it though last week. It's so hard for me to stick with it in October for some reason. It's the one time where my brain's like, I don't really want to talk about ghosts.
Because you're getting inundated with it from every angle. I think it's like it just feels too.
Well, and last week was good, but actual straight up ghost stories are pretty tough to find good ones.
Yeah, because usually it's and even last week the ghost part of the stories is
that's the
and
weakest
they saw
part.
A shadowy figure, and it's okay.
Yeah, and it's that's just you're afraid of strangers, dude. This week isn't a ghost story. This week, we are traveling the globe, and I don't remember the last time we've done a show like this, but we're talking about scary monsters from away from the America parts. And we're going to South America, which I don't think we've done before.
I don't think so either, no.
Yeah, and that's probably because I have no idea how the fuck South America could possibly come up with anything scarier than their natural wildlife.
America. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, they have spiders big enough that you can hear their footsteps in the jungle at night. Fuck that. Fuck it forever.
It's them in Australia, and the funny thing is the few like mythical creatures that I've read about from Australia are basically their real creatures. They're just like, oh, well, this is a wild dog lion that'll rip you to pieces. It doesn't actually exist, but these three other things do.
Jellyfish, you know.
Right.
So yeah,
South American.
Yeah, if you want your horror themed episode, there you go. Look up some South American spiders and have a great week. But if you want some actual urban legends and superstitions, I couldn't limit this to just like one country, because a lot of these kind of transcend to various countries and they'll have different variations and stuff. But the general stories and ideas stay the same. So let's get started with the pish taco, or piss taco, as I keep calling it.
Fish taco. That's terrifying.
Yeah, a piss taco is a pale-skinned vampire said to roam the Andes, and it kills peasants by draining their body fat, which is, you know.
So, like, at first you're like, hell yeah, thanks, piss taco.
I was going to say, in America, we would totally be, well, that's a valid plastic surgeon operation.
They had too much food here. All the North American piss tacos died of diabetes.
Yeah. It plays off of a fear people of Peru and Bolivia had about pale invaders.
I was going to point that out, so I'm glad that that's actually in there.
Because this was around the time they were actually first mentioned by a scholar in the 16th century, Cristobal de Molina, who actually wrote about this fear that these people had about Spaniards that were going to kill them and just drain their fat, which, man, you wish European invaders were that nice.
Well, I was going to say, like, that even, because one of the many killers, but one of the biggest ones were just the diseases that they brought over. And generally, as you die of disease, your body kind of wastes away, too. Yeah. So, like, you can see it's not like a humongous leap between what actually happened and this creature.
Yeah. Descriptions of the dreaded piss taco vary over the course of generations, but they're almost always white, pale men depicted as priests, doctors, aid workers, tourists, anthropologists, basically anyone who these people would be probably right not to trust. We talk when we do these episodes, especially with like Japanese urban legends, we talk a lot about what they represent in the culture. We try to talk about what they represent, and I like this one because it's a pretty, like, understandable embodiment of a fear a group of, like a culture had that got fucked over by European powers. So
yeah, out of all the mythical creatures that we've done, I think this is the one that's like the smallest removed from reality.
Yeah. And probably the, best, like, representation of a vampire-like creature is, like, really, like, embodying something directly evil that these people were going through. Next up, we got El Cuero, which either translates to cow leather or the leather. And it kind of looks like a hide of something when it's floating in the water. But when it attacks your ass, then you know how wrong you were, and you'll be a wiser person for it if you don't die. While it's described to look like a cowhide, it's actually something more like a stingray. It has eyes on stalks, a whip-like tail, and extendable mouth from its midsection, and claws around the outside of its flat body. This doesn't mean much, except there's like there's no cultural representation going on here. It's really just like there's scary shit in the lakes.
Yeah. Well, and there is, I mean, stingrays exist. I think there's freshwater water ones. I just am tickled at the idea that like they'd have a creature who's like, it sounds like its method of luring you in is to make you think it's a cowhide, and there's enough people.
Hey, free leather.
Yeah, it's sweet.
Jesus Christ, cat, get off me. She's just
wants
being
leather.
an asshole.
Yeah.
I think the thing about this one that's the way it's described is almost like xenomorphic. But the idea of just like this fucking cow stingray wrapping itself around your head is pretty terrifying, but also a little funny.
To be honest, the instant you said eyes on stalks, I was picturing Gary the snail from SpongeBob, except like flat and floating on the water.
On one of the articles, I say articles, it's just a couple of lists, but one of them, the way it depicts it, it almost looks like it's out of like Zelda Ocarina of Time. And it was like modeled with the N64 or something, but it does look kind of like that, and then just like a fucking stingray body.
Yeah.
Next up,
claws for some reason.
Yeah. Next up, we have the Incantado, which is a long-beaked dolphin native to the Amazon. So nothing to see here, except it. Go ahead.
I thought it was a dance. Let's do the Incantado.
I hope not, because the Incantado can actually take the form of a human, and they seem especially curious about humans and will attend festivals under the guise of musicians. They can stay in that form for years. They'll blend in, disappear. With a little luck, they have the Grail already. Which nobody gets that Indiana Jones line, but I have to say it every time I get set up for it.
I'm just picturing like you can blend in and you're like, all right, the way to live a life of luxury is to be a traveling musician.
Well, they're not trying to like live the life of luxury. They're just literally like kind of hanging out, seeing what we're about. And apparently, you know, they could be friendly, but sometimes they kidnap and rape young women. So, you know, because this needed to be a classic, you know, don't let women do things urban legend.
And not only that, a very convenient excuse for guys when like accusations start going around, be like, look, it wasn't me. It was clearly a dolphin.
It was some dolphin bitch. You did. Don't look at me. These things blend in for years, but you can find out what they are if you look under their hat. So not a great costume.
Is there like a blowhole under there or what?
Yep, exactly. Where there's supposed to be a bald spot, you'll find a blowhole, and you can be like, it's a rapist fish, kill it. Next.
Now I'm picturing one of these things just like kind of leaning against the wall, like vaping from the top of its head.
Now I'm just imagining somebody running through town yelling rape fish.
Rape fish.
Next up, we have the duendes. This creature's story actually originated in Spain, but, you know, around that time, anything from Spain kind of got brought over. So duendes are pretty much known all over Latin America at this point. And they're always described as annoying little goblin, elf-ass bastards. Like, some people believe they can be well-meaning spirits that are just a little mischievous. But a lot of people just think they're fucking assholes. They often try to scare children and torment people out of their homes. In fact, there was a Spanish law in the 16th century that if anyone moved into a home that realized it was infested with duendes, you were free to abandon it. Which is really funny because in America, your home could be infested with a million horrible things that actually do exist, and the bank will still break your fucking back trying to get you to pay for it.
So that's what you mean. I was going to say, because you're really, like, it's not like if I just abandoned my house here, they're not going to arrest me and be like, oh, house abandonment. But if it, like, actually, like, cleared you from the debt of the house.
Yeah. Well, that's what you get arrested for, not paying your fucking debt.
Right.
But if it's full of duendes, that shit needs to be in the contract.
Yeah, I'm going to write my bank and say, look, I'm starting to suspect that there's a duende. I don't want to move out, but I do want to quit paying you.
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting to me because these are always, like, the explanation for, like, the old, like, haunting tropes of, like, you know, cabinets slamming shut or something moving or being knocked off counters. Like, we went to ghosts. These guys think it's little fucking goblins and shit. And, you know, who's more right? You know,
I was going to say, I don't think less of.
Yeah,
I was going to say, I don't think less of that theory. I mean,
it's just,
if anything, I was about to say it seems more plausible to me.
Yeah, it's a little more concrete for sure. You know, at least they're willing to commit to a creature. And you know, here in the States, we're just like it was a chilly aura, a vibe, knocked over my coffee pot. So some believe these guys are the souls of infants who died before being baptized. Others think they're just little demons who only have the tie to the earth to cause trouble in it. Next up, we got El Culebron, which is a big old anaconda. Nature's hug 'em bud.
That sounds like the guy at the bar that you really don't want to. It's like, don't flirt with that girl. Her boyfriend's El Culebron. And you'd be like, whoa, yeah, I don't want to mess with that dude.
That does sound like something a dude would call himself if he was trying to sell the idea he had a big penis.
Well, especially knowing what the creature is now. Yeah.
Yeah. This guy is a massive hairy snake with a gigantic calf head at the top. The people of Chile said it would come out at night from dark caves or remote forests and just be devouring anything in its path. But it's also drawn to buried treasure and will arrive at treasure sites 40 days after it's been buried. I don't know if treasure needs to age like wine or why the fuck it takes so long, but I didn't make the story up, so 40 days. Once it's there, it'll guard the site. If you want to get the treasure, you have to douse it in aguardiente, which is a generic Spanish term for alcoholic beverages that contain between 29% and 60% alcohol by volume. In the hopes that the snake will just get fucking plastered, I guess. Which, I mean, if you're trying to do anything with a snake, that would probably be my best plan, is throw as much booze at it.
I've talked before how much I love this, like, treasure hunting and the idea of that, even though I think a lot of it's ridiculous. But if you're going to go treasure hunting and you think the treasure's guarded by a giant snake, booze is definitely coming. That's like the number one utility item that you need. You need
half a bottle just to take the edge off of what you're seeing.
Right.
Let alone even like concoct a plan.
That's the problem. My whole search party would be fucked because they'd be like, all right, there's the snake, get the boot. And they'd look at me and the bottle would be empty. They'd be like, God damn it, Steve. I'd be like, what?
I mean, did you see that fucking thing? It has a calf head.
I know. I was going to mention, I can't decide if that makes the creature more scary or less scary. My gut reaction is to immediately say less scary because it sounds ridiculous, but cows are fucking terrifying.
Yeah. Well, especially if they don't have legs and they're like slithering around. That sucks. There's really no part of this that I like. It's also said that this giant, hairy, horrible bastard can have wealth drawn to anyone who could possibly tame it. To do so, you have to find one in the wild and pluck 3 of its hairs out without getting eaten. And then you put the hairs in a bowl of milk, which is just what I would tell somebody to do if I wanted to see them get eaten by a culebron.
Yes.
From that bowl, 3 baby culebrons or culebros will be born. The strongest of the three will eat the other two and become another giant hairy piece of shit. Owners will have to keep feeding the fucking snake, animals, and relatives, and conduct this whole sacrificial transaction in secret. Otherwise, the money will dry up and you'll probably get eaten.
That sounds like way too much work.
Yeah, I was going to say, you basically made murder and feeding this fucking cow snake your full-time job. You didn't find some scam to get a bunch of wealth. Like, now you're on the hook for a ton of shit.
I don't feel like you're kicking back and living the easy life, no.
Yeah, you would be better off, like, I would rather mine than try to do this shit. Next up, we got La Ciguapa. This is a quick one. It's kind of in line with stories about other monsters that are in the guise of beautiful women that lead men to their deaths. La Ciguapa is just an amazing-looking woman who kind of lures you out into the woods, and then when it's too late, you realize that she has backwards feet. Which, I mean, I'd still probably try my luck.
I was going to say, given what I've seen on the internet, that might make her more popular.
I mean, feet are not that big of a deal to me. It takes different strokes, and I'm already out here. So, I don't know why that... it doesn't really say what happens. It just says men never return. So, it could just be the best, like, backwards foot sex that's ever been had.
Gives her more leverage for certain positions. I don't know.
Anybody on those tried and true porn sites, email me. Let me know if that's a thing. Next up, we got Mula Se Kabaka, or Quebeca. The story goes that there was a beautiful young woman who tempted a priest. After the two consummated their affair, God, who had nothing to do with making the two want to fuck to begin with, condemned her to live her afterlife as a headless mule that roams the city streets. Which, talk about punishment not fitting the crime.
Yeah, and I love how these stories, and you kind of already hinted at it with the last one, it's like, a lot of these myths are clearly just men that are terrified of, like, women that have any kind of power or control, and not even power, like just
ownership of their own sexuality.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I love in these kind of stories, and you see it over and over, even like today, like in actual like society and like news and stuff that happens. It's like, okay, so you have this, from what I could tell, perfectly single, free to do whatever she wants woman, and then the priest that's the one that shouldn't have sex with her, and then it's like God chooses to punish the woman because she tempted the... It's like, fuck all that noise. But it's common. It's very common.
It's always the woman, but dude, like, we all, you know, your dick didn't make a whoopsie, okay? You planned it. But she got the punishment, and now there's this mule that wanders the streets with flames blazing out where the head should be.
She's a hot piece of ass.
Yeah. Have a good week, folks. It'll let out shrieks and kick madly at anyone near her, and is powerful enough to kill on contact.
Well, I think a regular donkey is too, but...
If you're a chump, I could take a donkey. The mule also supposedly relishes the taste of eyes and fingers, which doesn't make a lot of sense if it's just shoving people into its neck cavity or whatever. Like,
right.
How can you tell what it likes? But I love the idea of this monster. Like, the visual is straight out of Bloodborne to me.
And that's what I was going to mention too. When you're like, oh, it'll kick in whatever, anybody that gets near. Who the hell lets a flaming headless mule get anywhere near them? It's hard for that thing to sneak up on you.
I mean, if it's just running through the streets, though, you never know.
Yeah, but if I see
one too many, and then you see some fucking nightmare mule running at you.
You just see the flames coming from around the corner, and you're sitting there thinking, okay, party bus or headless mule? Party bus or... Fuck, headless mule. Too late.
There is a point where you're so drunk that it takes you however long it takes you to process danger, add 5 minutes to it, because there's a part of your brain like trying to figure out if you're just making it up.
3 minutes after you're dead is when you go, I should probably run.
Yeah, you're just like you're that Fry from Futurama meme where he's just squinting, but what's coming towards you is doom. And to wrap things up, El Sombrerón, also known as Zepitio, Zimite, or my personal favorite, the Goblin.
Yeah.
He wears a big hat, dresses in mostly black, and wears a bunch of ornamental boots and belts, and also happens to be very small and creepy. So I'm
pretty sure I got a pretty nice item off that dude in Sekiro.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, the image I see of it is like if Final Fantasy had to design a goblin. It would be a goblin, but they would add like black leather and buckles and shit.
And a giant fucking hat.
And a giant hat, yeah.
And I hope it's one of the foam ones from like Dumb and Dumber, the foam like novelty cowboy hats.
I just imagine it as a cowboy hat that's way too big for him, so like constantly weighs him down to one angle. El Sombrerón sees a woman he likes, and he will mark his territory by tying a pack of mules outside her house. Then he will serenade her by playing his silver guitar. Even as creepy of a little shit that he is, this somehow works, and the woman will follow him home, and then he feeds her dirt. All the story says is that he does this so the woman can't fall asleep, which makes me very confused. I don't know how dirt does that.
Yeah.
Either way, the women are never seen again, and supposedly the little shit just keeps the girls and braids their hair, which is apparently one of their favorite activities. According to legend, you can keep them away when you have your hair cut short. Or you could walk away, or you could just probably knock them over because they're like 3 feet tall and fuck them.
Yeah, just like bop his hat off.
Yeah, like at no point does it say they're really strong. So I imagine a woman could just push her over.
Its arch nemesis is a slightly breezy day.
Yeah.
Fuck, my hat blew away again. I'll be back.
Yeah. So yeah, scary stuff. Most of these like urban legends are fun to do, but a lot of them are just like, I don't know how you don't laugh at some of them. Like El Sombrerón is hilarious.
Yeah, and like if I...
Like a little fucking Hot Topic, dwarf thing with a guitar is obsessed with long hair. It's like, how do you come up with that shit?
I really want somebody to try this. If you're a guy and there's some girl that you like, but you don't really know how to like approach her because it's awkward, and I get it's...
Tie a bunch of mules to her house.
Yeah, and then play a silver guitar while wearing a giant fucking novelty hat and some like leather chaps or something. And I just want to see if it works. I'm curious.
It will. Problem is, to keep her, you got to feed her dirt, and that's just expensive.
Where do I get dirt? Damn it.
I need the good shit that keeps her awake real long.
At least that one didn't go the rape angle like I expected it to, because so many of these legends...
I mean, don't rule it out.
Well, that's true.
We don't know really what happens to him. We just know hair is braided.
Like, how easy would it have been to be a serial killer back then? Because people would be like, another girl went missing. I think... Who was seen in the air, and then in the back of the crowd as the killer, you just yell out, I think it was a goblin! And everybody's like, yeah!
There's that little guitar goblin who ran through town the other day. Yeah.
And they just form, like, pitchfork and torch armies and, like, march around the countryside looking for a goblin while you're over here, like, serial killing.
Yeah. But anywho, that's some monsters. I'm running out of countries, so...
What we'll need to do is pick like one creature from each region and then like pit them against each other and like a theoretical like who would win this fight.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there's probably some like fuck you Japanese devil god who would like win all of those versus battles.
And it'd be something weird, like it was a microscopic monkey man that's got snake for a penis.
Yeah,
and
it's just it's just some like little fox demon with wings who fucks you up when you're jerking off or something. And the moral is always like, don't jerk off.
Like, I love all of these, and like you kind of said at the beginning too, one of the neat things is it does give you sometimes an insight into some of the culture and like from the parts of the world, and sometimes they're just like you said, you're like, what the hell? But I have to say, as much as I like all of them and I like hearing different countries, like Japan just seems to be the king of like absurd mythical creatures.
Well, because they apply a metaphor to everything. And then their imagination has no limits of how to capture that metaphor. So as much as I like doing all of these, you're right. There's nobody that... It's why I keep going back to fucking yokai.com every couple of months, because it's lit. I joke and say I'm running out of countries. Japan is literally an endless well of like just what kind of fucked up shit they came up with. Like you could have like gotten a fucking bad burger at a restaurant. There's a demon for that, you know. It's fucking great.
And the best part I think about all of it, and even though I don't watch them, is I swear there's an entire like anime or manga series starring each one of the, like, because they love their myths. Like they'll tie them into other stuff. Yeah. Like I don't know. That's great.
Yeah.
Like I never noticed the amount of like magical raccoons with swollen like magic balls until you did that one.
Big pendulum balls.
Yeah, and then it's like appears everywhere, and you're like, yeah, that's why.
And then you realize, wow, even Mario had these guys.
Anyway, I kind of hate bringing it up at the end because it feels like I'm saying, like, well, this week kind of sucked. You should have done Japan. That's not what I'm saying at all.
Yeah, we're raining on South America's thunder, but we like your fucking weird little goblin bastards and your fucked up fucking giant treasure snakes. And I'm serious, that fucking flaming headless mule is a really fucking cool monster. And I feel like you could get a lot of mileage out of that.
Its coolness factor went up about 1 million when you got to the part where, like, oh, it likes eating eyes and tongue or whatever, eyes and something else.
Yeah.
Because immediately my brain clicked into that same gear that you went to. It's like, wait a second. You said this thing was headless. Like it, How the fuck does it eat eyeballs? And it doesn't have fingers. It's a mule. Like, how does it pluck eyeballs? Like, yeah. I'm curious. I kind of want to see somebody get eaten by one.
Maybe like eats them whole and then spits out everything but the eyes and fingers.
Yeah,
pretty gross.
That's kind of what I was picturing. Like it just like somehow finagles your head into its neck cavity.
I imagined it just sort of like, you know, it's just constantly like bucking around and shit and flailing, and it just like if you get rammed by the neck cavity, then you start getting like devoured by it somehow.
That's an unfair assumption. I like to picture this flaming headless mule walking around the street, but it's really sophisticated. It's just like, good evening, gents.
Fucking knife and fork. Has a little butler following him around.
A bib. But it's got the little lobster on it because that's the only bib that you can wear as an adult. But
eyes again, sir.
Yes, please, with some Grey Poupon.
Oh, Wallace, you know me so well.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's the show this week. Thank you for listening. Bye.
I'm sitting over here blanking. I was trying to say something smart ass for the sign off, but
there's nothing. It's just
nothing.
It's just over. Forget about it. Move on with your life.
Get out of here.
Don't even look at me.